Hello to all of our amazing Legit KidLit viewers. I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Alexis. Today we welcome Rochelle Melander, author of Mightier Than the Sword: Rebels, Reformers, and Revolutionaries Who Changed the World Through Writing, which tells the inspiring stories of people who have written to change lives and communities throughout history.
Yay! This book will inspire young people who may not know or believe that writing their stories and speaking up for others can change the course of history. And there are interactive activities in each chapter that will engage anyone to tell stories, make art, and connect with the world around them. And P.S., if you want a sneak peek into the book, make sure you check out the activity packet on Rochelle's website under the resources tab. There is a lot of awesome resources there. And so this all sounds amazing, Rochelle. What inspired you to write this book?
So I have been teaching writing in libraries and schools for a long time. And I had been dragging resources, books, audio, and stuff like that to schools and libraries. And the kids really liked it. They liked it when we watched Martin Luther's I Have a Dream speech. They liked it when we listened to Nina Simone sing. And I got tired of just hauling stuff. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if there was a book that had the stories of all these people in one, and kids could just access it, and then it would have writing exercise. So instead of me going to all the schools, it would just the book would take these people to all the kids, and they would get to meet these people. So I put it in a book proposal for my book, Write-a-thon, which is behind me here. And as kind of this would be an additional book. And of course, it took me a long time to put this proposal together and send it out and get it accepted. And so finally, here it is, a book to help young people write to change their communities.
Yeah, they say, write the book that you don't have, or, you see something missing, then you should write it. So you
Yes.
did that. That's awesome. Um, we heard that there are some people in the book who began writing as kids, which is so cool. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So actually, a lot of the people in the book, as I started researching, have been writing since they were little. I mean, so there are some people like Sophie Cruz, who is a contemporary of our listeners, who wrote a letter to the Pope when she was 5 years old because her parents were undocumented, and she wanted him to fight for immigration rights. And she wrote a letter to the Pope, and she did this brave thing of like crossing security lines twice to try to meet the Pope. And the first time she got hauled away by security, and then she ran to later in the parade and crossed in, and the Pope's like, guys, let her in. And he gave her a hug. He took her letter to Congress. And so it's just an inspiring story of a 5-year-old really, standing up for her rights. And she continues to do so. And then we have Anne Frank, who probably a lot of your listeners know about. And Anne Frank was kind of the kind of our patron saint of lockdown. So all of you who've been on lockdown and who did COVID locked in your tiny houses or apartments with your family, read Anne Frank, because when she was 12, no, she had just turned 13, she got this journal. And then shortly thereafter, her family went into hiding in this itty bitty apartment. And it wasn't just her family, it was another family too. And she ended up having to share a room with this old guy. I mean, it was just miserable. And then she's in puberty. So imagine you're in middle school and you're sharing an apartment with this old guy. You've got your older sister. You've got all of these like parental units, like adults who are annoying. So what does she do? She writes about it. And her father, who survived his time in the concentration camps and did not survive, was a little nervous about publishing her journal, because he's like, she doesn't look great in it. Like, she's kind of whiny and angry, and she has a crush on a guy. And it's just like, she has all the feels during her teenage years. And she writes in her journal that the writing really helped her. And she had this vision when she was in hiding that she would get out and become a journalist and be able to use the words that she wrote in hiding to help other kids. So, I mean, she really was a visionary. And when you look at her birth date, she and Martin Luther King Jr. were born at the same time, which is kind of interesting. And then
that
last person I'll mention is Octavia. Well, I don't know who I should mention. Octavia Butler, because she's kind of an interesting woman. She's a science fiction writer. So if your students are interested in science fiction, she was dyslexic. She was an only child. Her mother suffered like a ton of miscarriages. And so Octavia was the only one who survived. And she grew up in a time when Black people were dismissed and pushed into a corner. And so her family didn't really think she could become a writer. I mean, she wanted to. They thought she should become a secretary. But when she was 10 years old, she found writing to be like a real benefit to her. And so she started writing these stories and creating these worlds. And what's interesting, you guys, is that the world she created in her notebooks when she was 10 became the basis of her Pattern Master series later on. So what I love to tell students is you never know the kinds of stuff that you're creating now in your notebooks, what will happen to that as you grow up and you're able to publish that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And like, you don't even know whenever you're young that you'll go on to do all those things. You just in the moment, which is kind of cool. And which people struggled as kids, as you mentioned, middle school is so hard. Growing up is hard, especially right now. So, who struggled as kids but still turned out okay?
Oh, this was really fascinating because so many of the people that I read about really were kind of stinkers as kids. And, you know, some through no fault of their own, some just were, and in kind of clever, creative ways. So Charles Darwin was a med school dropout, divinity school dropout, ne'er-do-well. And his father really didn't think he would amount to anything. So when he was just like 8 or 9, his mother died, and she was kind of his champion. And so his father's like, done with you, you're going to boarding school. Luckily, boarding school was within spitting distance of his house. So he hated it. He hated boarding school. He thought it was boring. He hated the fact that you imagine a bunch of 9-year-olds sleeping together in a room, and of course, no indoor toilets. So they all had chamber pots. So not only do we have stinky socks, we have chamber pots full of pee and poop. And he just thought this was disgusting. So he would get up and he would, before breakfast, he would sneak out and go and collect beetles and bugs and so forth in the woods. And when he got to be a teenager, he and his brother built this outdoor chemistry lab at their house. And so they would go and blow things up during the day. So he would go home and make laughing gas. And so his nickname when he was a teenager was actually Gas, because he did this laughing gas thing. So he goes on. His dad wanted him to be a doctor, and he worked in his dad's like clinic, but he would faint at the sight of blood. So he was like not good at this. So he worked in his dad's clinic for a while. He went to med school. He dropped out. He ended up going to divinity school because this was kind of like, so for women in the 50s, it was you're going to become a nurse, a secretary, or a teacher. So for men in Darwin's age, you're going to become a doctor or a lawyer or a minister. And so doctor fails, minister, not so great at. His dad says to him, "You care for nothing but shooting dogs and rat catching. You will be a disgrace to yourself and your family." So he finally ends up getting this apprenticeship on a ship, and he collects all these specimens. And of course, that's where he gets his big idea about evolution. And again, it took him, like he wrote the whole book, and then it took him, they put it on the shelf, and he was freaked out about what people would think of his idea. So it took him another 20 years before he published. So to go to a little more contemporary person, Malcolm X, he had just like the hardest time. The poor guy, his dad was this amazing activist, which I don't know if anybody knows. And his dad was killed when he was 6, probably murdered. And Malcolm X lived with his mother for a while, but his mother did not do well mentally after his father died. So he ended up living with siblings, getting in with the wrong crowd, selling drugs, going to jail. And that all kind of turned into a blessing, because after he was in jail, he did a lot of work reading the dictionary and reading books. And that kind of turned him around and made him it made him into the activist he became. So those are 2, but read the book. There's lots of other people who had tough childhoods.
Oh,
It's so
definitely reading the book.
Yeah, it's so interesting hearing you talk about it. It's like you're friends with all these people and like you just know the inside scoop to their lives. So I'm sure the book reads very similarly,
I was just gonna say that.
to where we can get that inside scoop. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, what is your hope for middle schoolers who will use your book?
Well, I think, first of all, I'd like to see it just as a storybook. So just read the stories, like enjoy learning about these people. The people come from all walks of life. So as a teacher, I teach a lot at the library. So whoever shows up. And there's sometimes a little bit of arm twisting that goes on my part with young people who are like, I'm going to be a police officer. I don't need to write. I'm going to be a sportscaster. I don't need to write. I'm going to play basketball. So I wanted to include sports writers and scientists and adventurers and people like that, because I wanted people to see that people write in all sorts of professions, and actually it benefits you to know how to write. Then I think the other way to use it is kind of a reader's guide. So there are 40 like bona fide profiles, and then 5 kind of interludes about times in history. And then there's over 100 sidebars. And so you can kind of look at this as a reading list, like, see what Octavia Butler has written and go look at her books for yourself. I highlight for each person, I highlight one thing, but go looking at their bibliography and find books. These are great. They're not all memoirs. A lot of them are novels or poems. They're great resources. But finally, and maybe most importantly, I want this to be a writing guide for you all. So it's just prompts, and it's prompts that you can take and use however you want. And so I really want young people to write, and I want young people to write to change the world, but also to change themselves. So there's lots of research about how writing makes you feel healthier and it helps you achieve your goals and all that kind of stuff, overcome anxiety. Do you mind if I read one sentence from the book? So this is from the introduction, and this is my favorite part of the book. It says, the minute you put pen to paper, you change. When you share your writing, it changes others. Your words have the power to transform you and your world. Take up your pen and write. So that's my hope for the book.
That's so great. I love that. And as you were just speaking, I thought of so many ways that I could use the book in my classrooms as well. Like it's almost like the possibilities are endless. So teachers, grab this book. It definitely seems like a wonderful resource for your classroom. And you also have quite a lot of workshops available on your website that you offer to do with schools and libraries and things like that. Which one is your favorite?
So that's like choosing between my children, because they're all great. So I'm going to choose the Book of Me, because the Book of Me encompasses a lot of the workshops I teach. And the Book of Me can be in one session or it can be in several. And it gets young people to write about their own lives and then put that writing together into a little book. And you could use Mightier Than the Sword to do that. You could use my workshop to do that. The second is a sneak peek into the exercise we're going to do today, which is the how-to book, because I feel like you kids are so smart. And so I feel like you can solve a ton of the world's problems. So why aren't you writing how-to books? So that's it. I get kids to write a how-to book, either for their own lives or for other people.
Awesome.
I like that. We also saw on your website that you are an ADHD coach. So could you teach us a technique that could be helpful?
Yes. So I have several, but let me give you my very favorite one. I don't know if any of you guys procrastinate. I know that my kids procrastinated a lot. And here's the thing, like nobody procrastinates fun. No kid's like, oh gosh, I've been meaning to play blah, blah, blah video game, but I just can't get around to it. I've been putting it off again and again. You don't procrastinate the things you love. So there's this technique in science called temptation bundling or fun framing, where you bundle something you love with something you procrastinate. So let's say you procrastinate your homework. You need to think of like a list of things that you love to do. And it might be things like you might love hot chocolate, or you might love a certain playlist of music, or you might love going to the coffee shop with a parent or a friend, or you might love studying at the library. So you only allow yourself to do that thing that you love with the thing that you're procrastinating. And that's how you get yourself to do it. Now, here's the caveat. I don't think media multitasking works. So the thing you love can't be video games or binge watching your favorite show or something like that, because that makes your brain hurt. It makes a grown-up's brain hurt more. Kids are better at media multitasking, but it's still not good for you. So just think about those things that you love to do, temptation bundle them, and then see if you get your homework done.
I like the way temptation bundle. I like the way that you worded that.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I do. And I like media multitasking. I'm going to use that because I'm so guilty of that.
Oh,
and it does hurt your brain.
My kids do it all the time, and my students do too. And I just I like keep saying, you cannot do your homework while you're binge watching Dash and Lily or whatever. You just can't. And they're like, yes, I can.
Okay, but are you really being the best? Are you really actually doing a good job?
What your brain is doing is it's task switching. So you're going back and forth, and it's called rapid toggling. So you're like going back and forth. So just imagine how that bobblehead in your back of your car feels at the end of a ride. That's how your brain feels. Your brain's like, ah!
Yeah, that makes sense. So we are almost done, but we want to end with a fun writing activity. So can you walk us through something like that?
Yes. So we're going to do, what I want you to write is a how-to book. And so it's going to end up like this, like 6 ways to be a friend. And it's going to have little things. So all you need is 6 little things to make your book. I think start with a mind map. So what you want to be, how to be a superhero, and then put your times or your ideas around it. And that's where you come up with your things. What you're going to need for this is some paper, scissors, and markers. And I'm just going to teach you how to make the little book quickly. So you're going to do a hamburger fold. So that's a hamburger fold when it looks like this. And then you can do a second hamburger fold quickly. So you've got that. Then you open it all up and you do a hot dog fold. So a hot dog fold is just the vertical fold. So you've got your hot dog fold. So once you've got your hot dog fold and your 2 hamburger folds, you go back to your hot dog fold and you see where this fold is. And then you got this little cross in the middle. You're going to make a cut from the bottom to the middle. So then you have this kind of weird thing, like it could be a puppet. And all you do, so you've got it like that, is you push it together. Mine is really messy. You can make it better. And then you have your little book. So then you have, this is your title, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the end. And so you grab your markers once you have your list of things that you want to do, and you create your list. And as I said, kids have written how to be a friend, how to be kind. You can do something like 6 things we love about the library. I made something during COVID called my Book of Delights about things that I like to do. A lot of the young people I work with deal with anxiety or social anxiety disorder. So they come up with tools for themselves to deal with an anxiety attack or to talk with people or connect with other people. So that can be really helpful.
Oh, that is so fun.
And
that
then
was fun.
Yours is little, so you can put it in your pocket or your purse.
That's cool. I'm doing that. Definitely we'll walk through that writing activity together for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Rochelle. This has been amazing learning about your book, hanging out with you, discussing everything, learning all these great techniques and, things to help inspire us to be better writers. So just thank you for getting to spend time with us today. It was wonderful.
Oh, thanks for having me. This was really fun.
And if teachers sign up for your newsletter, is there something that they get?
So if you sign up for my newsletter, you get this amazing little book of prompts. And it's just really fun stuff that you can use for yourself or with your students.
Yeah, that's a great resource. So thanks for all of the resources on your website. I am bookmarking it right now to make sure I look at it. So thank you, Rochelle, and thank you to all our readers. We hope that you enjoyed our show and are inspired to go pick up some incredible and inspiring books and maybe write a little bit, create a little booklet. We'll be back next weekend with some more KidLit fun. So take care and bye-bye.
See ya.